It's time for Rosé All Day and Juleigh's a Mess, where we talk about current events and living in an intersex life. And now, here's Juleigh.
That's a good place to start the show, Rebecca. We're totally playing the intro, and she goes, "I have my hand on your ass."
I did.
And
I was like, "This is nice," and then I was like, "That's
it's nice."
Julie's
I don't.
ass. That's
I
not
don't.
a pillow.
Let's be honest. I don't have an ass, and as my good friend Melissa says, "You're flat as a board." And she's like, "This is kind of nice," and I'm like, "Well, it's the Oscars tonight. I thought I would, let you touch my ass." We are live in the studio together for Rosé All Day, Optimistic in Orlando. I'm your host, obviously, Juleigh Mayfield. If you've been joining us before, just Juleigh, and this is my co-host, Rebecca Davis. And we have been MIA for a good, first, we do our show every Sunday night at 7 p.m. February was rough for me, so we missed 4 shows.
At least.
Yeah, 4 shows because we're in March. Mm-hmm. And even though I titled this February 10th, but it's March 10th. And we're going to talk about that. And then before that, we'd missed a couple of shows in January. Wasn't feeling great. Also working. You had some things going on. Mm-hmm. So we have been MIA for a good probably 6 shows. She just celebrated a birthday yesterday. She's 35, even though she doesn't look it. I don't look my age either.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're both chickens.
Looking for a guy. No, I'm just kidding. So it's been a while. My dog's below us. So I was like, what is this? It's our dog. So anyway, we're gonna get to it. We are drinking tonight. Well, we drank earlier too, because we've been recording some shows. So just heads up. We are focused on getting our podcast back on wherever you listen to your podcast, which in the past has been Spotify and Apple and Blurry and anywhere that you find your podcast. So if you've missed us in that form, start looking for us again soon for Rosé All Day. It'll be under the original title of Rosé All Day, Juleigh's Mess. Even though Optimistic in Orlando is about dating, living an intersex life, but also just dating in a metropolitan city, can't speak tonight, the pratfalls, the pitfalls, the good moments, the bad moments. But because we've been gone for so long, we're going to kind of fill everybody in on what has been going on. We also invite people to join us every Sunday night at 7 p.m. for the live chat. You can join us on YouTube. You can follow us on justjuleigh.com. And then you can come in and talk to us live. So maybe tonight we'll have some people join in, maybe not. It is Oscar Sunday. So I would think people are probably watching the opening credits for the Oscars right now, if they even know about it. We're going to talk some about that too, because there were some definite surprises on who was nominated and who wasn't nominated. And we're going to be able to tie that back into dating, kind of what people have been looking for in a partnership, certainly if you are a female looking for a male partner. So what are you drinking tonight?
Saint Chateau Michel.
Chateau Michel.
It's quite nice. It says dry, crisp, and elegant, but I would say it's like.
Are they talking about the Michelle? She's dry, crisp, and elegant.
I'll go with crisp and elegant, but I think Michelle,
maybe
on a good night, is not dry.
She might not be. She might not be. If we're going to laugh like we normally do, we may not be dry either by the end of the show. I drank 2 glasses of dry Michelle, crispy Chateau, earlier today. Michelle. So now I'm drinking Body Armor, the official drink of Just Juleigh Doesn't Need Another Glass of Wine. We are also looking for a wine sponsor, as we have for the last 3 years. So if you know anybody that would like to sponsor our show, please give them a ring-a-ding-ding for us. And what?
I'm just thinking of Michelle being
dry and crispy Michelle.
We're here for you, Michelle.
We're here for you, Michelle. Dry Michelle. So So that's what I'm drinking. And then let's get into it.
Okay. I first want to started off by asking you about, let's have a little recap of what brought you into the hospital, what you were concerned about initially, and then kind of just a little bit of your journey of what you went through, because it was pretty horrifying.
I would love to say that I went into the hospital for a facelift and a boob lift, but I've already had the boob lift and they look great. So February 2nd, I woke up in the morning and I had extreme dark floaters and kind of looked like I was looking at a lace in my left eye. And then I had a pain in my left arm. The pain radiated across my chest. And then I had projectile vomit. And so I called my roommate upstairs and I was like, look, I don't feel great. I haven't felt great the last couple of days. I don't know what's going on. We checked my blood pressure. It was kind of off the charts. We thought I had cardiac issues.
Yeah, that was scary.
So rushed to the ER and started to go through the motions of what that was. And they initially came back and they said, we don't know if it's cardiac issues. Your levels with your kidneys are kind of off the chart. And we know that you don't have diabetes, but you might have been on the precipice at some point in time, maybe prior to your vessel change in 2018 when you're bigger, all kind of tied into the XXY. So we want to do a kidney biopsy. So for like the first week I was in, they weren't sure if they wanted to do the biopsy first or if they wanted to do cardiac stuff first. And so cardiac and nephrology were kind of in a bidding war as to who got me on the table first. So that wasted about 4 days. And then finally, nephrology said, we have to do ours first, because if cardiac does anything with you first, they're going to put you on tons of blood thinners, and that will negate a kidney biopsy for up to 60 days. And they're like, we need to know what's going on. So for about 4 days, I was in limbo. They finally did the kidney biopsy. My kidneys are working at about 60-65%. They said I have early onset kidney damage, that they think they can keep it at bay with medication. And kind of originally they were like, we're going to put you on Ozempic. And I got super excited because I was like, I get to lose weight before swimsuit season. Then as the month went on and we found out other stuff, I'm not really a candidate for that because my body's already doing, for me, what Ozempic would do, which is slowing. But so anyway, kidney biopsy. Then they went in and did a cardiac catheterization and said, it's not your heart. And you basically just got a tune up because we flushed your heart. You don't have any plaque. You don't have anything going on in there. We had to go in and check it, but nothing's wrong with it. So you basically got a tune up. And I thought, great. And they did the kidney biopsy. And then I still had the issues. And they couldn't figure out why I was still having the issues. So at this point, it became a doctor's guessing game, and it just started to really prolong the stay. And I couldn't seem to get out.
I was like, how?
I couldn't get out. And then people were contacting me and saying, how are you still in there? How do they not know what's going on? Why are you still in there? Like, I literally went through a round of people sending me flowers. It looked like I was working in a floral shop. The flowers all died after me, like putting aspirin and water in. And like, I got gifts and all these wonderful things, but then I was still in there in 3 weeks and then I couldn't get out. And then, so eventually they did a HIDA scan, which is where they try and locate your gallbladder by injecting dye into it. And they'd run every other test. I had MRIs and a CAT scan, and they'd done everything. And even prior to me going into the hospital for this, I had had issues back in January and had to have like tests done at the urologist. And they thought I may have cancer, and they thought I had a cyst. And then while I'm in the hospital this time, they said, we think you have a stomach bleed. So we have to go find the bleed because you're losing blood. And then the doctor would come back and be like, I think it's because you've already had 2 operating sessions and you would have lost blood doing that. So then they're injecting iron into me every day, and the iron's causing my veins to run flat. So within a month, I had 8 IVs and a midline put in. I mean, I couldn't get out. And then they finally said, we can't find your gallbladder on any of the scans. And I was like, is that problematic? And they said, well, we're going to go in and check. So they go in to check, and the doctor that did that test came back a day later and said, I'm sorry, I got a little aggressive. We went ahead and removed your gallbladder. In the 40 years of practicing medicine, that's the worst gallbladder I've ever seen. Ha ha ha, joke on me. People are like, look at you breaking down glass ceilings even while you're in the hospital. I was like, But he said it was necrotic, that it was filled with gallstones, that all my bile ducts were fused off, that it was filled with fermented bile, that that they removed it. It was dead. It had a gray pale color. And he said, no wonder you feel like crap. I would think that's been doing it. Well, they removed the gallbladder. I'm still having the symptoms of the tight arm, sweeping across the chest, and the projectile vomiting. So they keep me even longer. Then they do a gastroparesis test, and I don't have gastroparesis, but they said, however, you have a delayed stomach empty. And this was when I was at the end. I was like, look, none of my veins are working. I don't want to be here anymore. I'd jump out of the window if I could. People are wondering if I'm ever going to get out. People are now wondering if it's a trans issue. Is it an XXY issue? Are they trying to kill me issue? Like, I don't think it was any of that, but like you start to wonder because you've been in there for 4 weeks. And so then they came back and they were like, if you, Rebecca, ate a meal, right? 4 hours after you eat that meal, 10% of that meal should still be in your stomach, but the rest of it should have moved through your system. So they were coming back to me at the end and saying, 4 hours after you eat, 96% of that meal is in your stomach because you have a delayed emptying response. And there's not a cure for it, but we can perform a surgery which would open up the muscle just past the stomach, at which point the food would just kind of pass faster. And I'm like, but it doesn't cure the issue. And they were like, well, we don't know what the issue is, but you can. And I was like, nope, I've had 4 procedures literally in 4 weeks. My body is exhausted. I'm going home. If medicine doesn't help it, we can then kind of do this surgery. And the place I was at was like, okay, but just so you know, we're the only hospital in Florida that does it. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to make me sign up to have it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see if the medicine's going to help first. And then you start to realize
this hospital hasn't really won me over.
No. And my mom was like, why'd you go? And I said, because it's the Christian hospital in town. And she was like, well, it does. They are the number 2 hospital in Florida. And I went, Mom, there are only 2 hospitals in Florida.
Really?
You either go to this one or you go to ORMC because they bought Florida Hospital out.
Oh, well, we have like one locally in Palm Bay.
Yeah, but I mean,
you mean like the big hospital.
The big hospitals in Florida, it's this one or ORMC. And everybody was like, you need to start going to ORMC. They're just more amenable to the LGBTQI community. And I was like, why don't I just never go into a hospital again? Right? Let's do that. Yeah. Like maybe let's just focus on being healthier and never going back in. But it was really scary. It was really scary. It was also probably the needed break that I needed to not have to worry about dating for 4 weeks. Right? I just said to you earlier, I was like, sometimes the universe forces you to slow down. And obviously the gallbladder is dead. So there are some big takeaways from being in there for 4 months. Or for, God, not even 4 months. It felt like 4 months. But then some of the other things is, you would ask, is it tied to the XXY? Maybe, but there's not enough research being done on that. So I can't say that necessarily, I mean, my dad had his gallbladder removed. There are other aspects could be related, right? And then they said because of the delayed stomach emptying, I'm not a candidate for Ozempic because my body is already naturally doing what Ozempic would do. They're like, you don't really eat because you're always feeling full and your stomach's not processing. And they were like, so you're going to go from not eating 3 meals a day to maybe eating, because I was sharing with my roommate, I eat when I'm hungry. And sometimes I won't even eat all day. And then I go, oh, I should eat because I need that protein, right? Yeah. And then if I'm not doing that, what happens when you go on something like Ozempic and you don't eat for like 2 weeks, right? And then you're putting, so not a candidate for Ozempic, but gave me a break from kind of, and unfortunate. I mean, we did come on and do a couple of shows, but we were doing shows that we were passionate about and, helped out Bonnie's production of Mrs. Evers Boys, and we did that.
Which was excellent, by the way. If you tuned in for the roundtable, the play was just out of this world. The reading, they did an incredible job. So,
and that first week in there, I was like, we have to host this show. I was supposed to host that roundtable, and I literally called her and I was like, I am not getting out of the hospital. I will run it from the hospital room, but I can't be a part of it. I look like death. And I think people were surprised that I still ran it and didn't
I was
cancel.
surprised you still ran it, but it was
it was a good cause. It was for a good cause
that we did. Yeah.
So and when I came out of the hospital, roommates were like, no offense, but fuck that institution. Like, you're not going back into it. And then other people were like, I can't believe they kept you so long. And I'm like, look, it's not fun being in the hospital. Got some things taken care of that absolutely needed to be taken care of. However, not a good experience and not fun.
I just can't believe that they couldn't. I feel like in the 1200s, they could have figured out the gallbladder faster than they did with you. So,
but people said that.
Also, why is this a 4-day negotiation process? Whether or not you need to get what in what order?
Well, I think that came
down to somebody's bottom of someone's email.
We're coming in and they're like, look, this happens all the time. Cardiac feels like it should, that the heart should come first because the heart controls everything. And then you had nephrology coming in saying, okay, but we've got to make sure that your kidneys are protected, because if cardiac comes in and kind of is like a bull in the china shop, it still could negate other issues. And look, cardiac even came in and said, at one point, the guy who I didn't like him at all, right? He was just kind of pompous. He said, well, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to put strain on your kidneys because you might need dialysis one day. And I was like, okay, but like, you're making me wait.
Right.
Like, and they were literally arguing. And I was like, if it's such a concern,
why don't you spend 4 hours together in a room figuring it out instead of 4 days
and talk? And they would put like notes in the account, but they wouldn't read the notes. And I finally had it. I was like, pick one. We've gone through the first weekend. You haven't done anything. And I threw a fit and I was like, pick one. We're all going to die. None of us are getting off this planet, to quote Bianca Del Rio. So pick a procedure and do it. Because if you can't decide which one to do first, I'm going to be in here for 8 weeks and we're not going to be moving forward.
Yeah.
So I finally kind of snapped on them, and then
you kind of have to do that, honestly, and with doctors. And
now some of the tradeaways were when cardiac first came in, he was like, why do you think it's your heart? And I said, well, XXY women tend to have heart issues as they age. And I'm 48, and not 6 years ago, I was told I wouldn't even make it to 48 if I didn't transition and I didn't go to swing to the female end of my spectrum. So I was like, I'm concerned. And then he was trying to figure out, and he was like, he wasn't disagreeing with me. But then the woman that was in there with him, which was like his assistant, she turned around, she goes, I know who you are. She goes, you're one of the leading advocates in this state, if not the Southeast, for intersex people. And she starts talking to him, and he kind of turned his attention to her. And then he was like, listen to that. But then I was sharing with my mom, you think they would read your chart, because the attending that checked me into the ER asked me if I was trans. And I said, no, I'm intersex. And he wrote in big, large letters, transgender, in my notes. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to fight this. It's not a pick your battles. But then during the extent of the 4 weeks, they asked me if I could be pregnant 4 times. Well, maybe you're having these issues because you could be pregnant. And I looked at them and I went,
would you like to see my tattoo?
I'm like, oh, well, but I also said, stop. But I also said, if you read my chart, that wouldn't be a question for you. So that's clear you don't read people's charts and they make you answer all these new questions every day. then at the same time, my mom's like, well, don't forget to tell us what you're having. And I was like, I actually said to the hospital at one point, I went, I'm 48. And their response was, oh, well, the cutoff at this hospital is 55. And I went, who the fuck wants to be 55 and having a baby? I said, look, I don't plan on being 78 in a high school gym saying, go, John, you can make this shot. Also, I was like, I know you're a Christian hospital, but Jesus himself would have to come home and immaculately concept a baby at this point. Read my chart, right? I was like, Ford, come on. After the second time, you should have been like, nope, she's not getting pregnant.
I can't.
Doctor, you'll laugh at this because I use this all the time. One day, well, why can't you get pregnant? And I literally said, do you remember easy bake ovens in the 80s? And he was like, yes. And I'm like, every girl I know wants an easy bake oven. Imagine going to Goodwill now and finding an easy bake oven. And you go, oh my God, I wanted this for so long. I'm going to buy it and take it home. And then you get home and you realize it's an easy bake oven. It's really pretty on the outside, but not all the fucking parts are in it to make a cake. And then you're like, oh, damn it. The bulb's burned out, or there's not a cake pan, or I'm going to use it as Barbie's tanning booth. Like you literally, I was like, this is not a guessing game. It's science, but you should read my chart and be able to figure out that my pain is not from pregnancy.
These are our doctors.
I literally made myself laugh one night in the bathroom because I could hear Dr. Bones or whatever his name was from Star Trek going, I'm a doctor, Jim. And I was like, none of these people could say that.
That's rough. But you took a break from dating you actually were still kind of on the apps a little bit. There was a reconnection. We don't have to talk about that. But I think it did give you this refresher in general too. Just like sometimes when you're online, you have to take a breath sometimes, whether you chose to or it just happenstance, to step away and be like, oh, this toxicity is not an extension of me. I'm not identifying with the swamp I'm in. I'm not experiencing this all the time, things not going how they should, terrible people, just taking a breath sometimes and resetting and being like, okay, no,
I think that's
what's important in life.
It also taught me that like, there are men that I thought would step up to the plate. Well, Pie Guy. Let's talk about Pie Guy.
Oh, yeah.
Pie Guy's mother was in that same hospital when we first met. And he would always say to me, I have to go visit my mom, or I have to go do this, or I can't do. But he wouldn't come see me. And yet he would text me and say, oh my God, I missed you so much. And I can't wait to like show you what an honest catch I am and spend time with you. And I'm like, come see me at the hospital. Like, we've been intimate. Come see me. Wouldn't come. Now I get 100% that some people are triggered by hospitals.
Can be hard.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But I'm in there for 4 weeks. And I literally, the men that came to see me to make sure that I were okay, they're all gay. I'm not dating them. So it's my roommates and friends in the community. And one guy said, we got to get you out of there because you got to get back to advocating and we need you strong. But I thought, none of the guys I'm dating. And then we'll talk about the reconnect, just to say that, ladies, if you're listening or watching this podcast, if you're listening to the podcast on the streaming, I want you to know that, and not everybody, like we're not man bashing tonight, but there are men that absolutely, I guess you are not the only one that's struggling to find a match. Mm-hmm. And you're not the only one that's struggling to find a good match, right? I mean, I literally was going onto the table for my heart catheterization, which they put you under twilight. It's not a big deal. You're not like in this deep, like sleep, but it's your heart. They're literally running a filament line through your heart to flush out or any of the, if you have a blockage, they're pushing the blockage through. You're not under a heavy sedation, but you're on the table for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and they're trying to figure out if it's your heart. And if there's a problem, they're going to fix it, right? And I literally had a guy that I used to date reach out, and we're not going to go into detail about it, but just think about it and how toxic this is. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's reaching out to me. I never hear from him. Maybe he's changed. And he literally said to me, well, that's a serious surgery. What happens if you don't make it off the table? Have you decided who you're leaving your financials to?
And let's just say, folks, this is a person who was wildly interested in Juleigh's finances at the time they were dating.
I mean, he would have taken he did take the last $5 out of my wallet one night. But, I'm not bashing on him, but I thought, I'm literally getting on the table, and you bring up that I may not make it off the table if there's a major issue, and who am I leaving my finances to?
And you're literally, I mean, it's the worst joke ever. You cannot say that to anybody under any circumstances, especially, I mean.
And when I called him out on it.
But also, he's literally asking. And
when I called him out on it, he went, oh, I was joking. You took that the wrong way.
Well, I'm still taking it the wrong way, sir.
What a horrible joke.
What a lie.
So then, you come out of that and you're like, I'm not missing anything by not dating. And then I met somebody and I thought, I'll go out with them. He's like, are you finally out of the hospital? And I went, yes. And he was like, thank God. He was like, I'd like to take you out. And that was a shit show roller coaster. So I'm like,
yeah, we were hopeful about that one.
You just go, ugh, yuck.
You gotta have the energy to go on the roller coaster over and over and over again when you're doing online dating, which we were talking about is kind of like, feels like your only option these days, unless you want to take my $7,000 course to teach how to meet people online. No, I mean, in real life.
And Julie will show up for another $500.
But I mean, it is difficult to meet people in real life. People don't really do it anymore. It's not an environment that fosters that. So you're kind of stuck with online, but online is just fundamentally toxic, and it's fundamentally a roller coaster. And that's like, it's apocalyptic, but that's the state of the world. And we kind of have to live with the reality we've got. And that's kind of what this show is too, is just like, look, this is how it is, folks. So how are we going to treat ourselves? How are we going to treat other people? What is it that we're going to prioritize in a relationship? And what are we going to really take to the table and with what we've got?
And you on some level, and this will kind of tie into what we were going to talk about next. I think single people, male and female, are looking for somebody that has their back, is going to put them, maybe you're not their first priority going into it, but ideally you want somebody that places you at a high priority, right? And that's the whole point of dating and meeting people and going out with people. And I think that's where the frustration lies when so many people do lead with sex, which we talked about in a previous show today. Like, what do you accept? Do you prefer a low level of intimacy talk at the beginning? Do you establish boundaries? We talked about that. We'll show that show in the next couple of weeks, or it was kind of, we call them in the can shows. So it's for when we have things live, but we talked about that. Mm-hmm. And we would hope that you would subscribe to us on YouTube, that you click the notification button so that you're notified when these different shows are coming out, so you don't miss out on that as well. But we kind of honed in on that a lot of women are saying, where do I meet these people? I was talking about how the show or the page on the book face is, are we dating the same person? Mm-hmm. Those kind of pages. And a woman in there today said, I'm tired of reading all the trash in here. She was like, where can I go to meet somebody? I'm new to this town. And a lot of women laughed and said, good luck. Mm-hmm. Like, because you can't tell 1,000.6 women that are in that group to go hang
to
out
the
at
bar.
Nick Henry's bar on Friday night because they have a good subsection of good men. And then
Like
you've
hyenas.
got 1,000 women fighting for the 2 good men in the bar. You don't need that competition either. But going back to needing a man that's going to stand up for you, that kind of segues. So tonight is the Oscars. And there was a lot of talk, even when I was kind of, because you're in the hospital, there's nothing else to do. I think I watched every original Disney movie, and was thinking about, oh my God, this is so different than when I watched it as a kid. But also you're kind of dialed in. I'm not big into like social media and like shows, but you find yourself gravitating to like gossip and stuff because there's nothing else to do. And you're literally in the hospital with all of your veins utilized. And you're like, oh my God, I think I finished watching Housewives of Jersey, Housewives of Orange County, Housewives of Beverly Hills, started a new like Deal or No Deal island game. Like I literally was like so in that I was reading articles about who was nominated for Academy Awards and who wasn't. I usually follow that pretty religiously. This year I haven't, and since I've been living life, I haven't, right? I know that some of the heavy hitters were Oppenheimer. I think Saltburn was thrown in there. I'm not sure though. But, let's talk about the Barbie movie, right? A lot of women saw that movie and they resonated with it. And they resonated with the overall message. And they resonated with the fact that there's this greater patriarchy. And as hard as women try, they don't fit anywhere. And it's hard for them because they are very much a woman in a man's world, right? So the Academy Award nominations come out, and Margot Robbie, who plays Barbie, not nominated. Greta Gerwig, who directed the film, not nominated, and yet she grossed more as any female director in the onslaught of that film. She made more money for that studio, and she didn't get nominated. And then Ryan Gosling, who plays Ken, gets nominated. So a lot of people were like, wait a second. The movie was about not living up to the patriarchy, and the one guy that's in the movie that's the antithesis and tries to bring patriarchy back to Mattel Land or Barbie World gets nominated. So people are like, that's some irony for you. Let me read what he said, though, because I shared this with Rebecca earlier. She hadn't heard about it. And I said, you know what? This is the kind of guy that every girl wants. Every girl wants this kind of guy. On some level, every guy wants this kind of girl, not Barbie, but wants this vibe in a girl. Somebody that has their back. So Ryan Gosling defense of Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig after the Oscar snubs. Ryan Gosling is just as shocked by those snubs as the rest of us. The actor earned his 3rd Academy Award nomination for his portrayal as Ken in last year's blockbuster film Barbie, but he lamented the lack of recognition for the film's lead star and its director, Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig. There is no Ken without Barbie, and there is no Barbie movie without Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, the two people most responsible for this history-making, globally celebrated film. No recognition would be possible for anyone on the film without their talent, grit, and genius. To say that I'm disappointed that they are not nominated in their respective categories would be an understatement. Against all odds, with nothing but a couple of soulless, scantily clad, and thankfully crotchless dolls, they made us laugh, they broke our hearts, they pushed the culture, and they made history. Their work should be recognized along with the other very deserving nominees. Barbie earned a total of 8 nominations for tonight's ceremony, though Robbie and Gerwig did not get nods in the Best Actress and Best Director categories. The two still may win gold statues. Gerwig and her husband, Noah Baumbach, who co-wrote the film's script, received a nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. And as a Barbie producer, Robbie still has a chance to snag the award for Best Picture. Gerwig and Robbie have both been nominated for Oscars in the past as well. However, that's a direct snub, right? But people want to date somebody like Ryan Gosling. I want to date a guy that has my back in that situation.
Well, what's interesting is you think a lot about how it feels that currently when women are fighting for their rights and themselves, it often feels like we're alone in the fight. And there are the men who are vocally opposed to it and are like, don't take us down. And then there are men who are kind of like silent and are like, okay, cool, honey, you do your career. But they don't really speak to the power. And I've recently really been blessed. And we had another episode that'll be coming up for you guys at some point about manifestation. But I had opened my heart to like having more male friends who really respect me and care for me and just kind of allowing the love in from men in my life. And I have friends who I am in open dialogues with about how I feel as a woman. Like at times I'm like, wait, I'm operating the world as if I am lesser than you, and saying that to them and talking about that with them. And then being like, well, yeah, no, of course, like, and then fighting for me. And when a topic comes up, bringing it up and being like, oh, did you hear this thing? And someone wished me a happy International Women's Day the other day. And I was like, that's cheesy as hell. And also like, I thank you. Listen, personally
somebody mentioned it to me, and
I
I felt like Austin Powers. I was like, International Woman of History. I was like,
And it was just like, that matters. It matters. It brings us closer together. And sometimes when you're in charge, when you are the privileged party, and we all have our privileges, when you are the privileged party, sometimes you really have to freaking advocate. You have to go out on a limb and say, you know what? And you know what was interesting about what he did is he didn't say, I shouldn't have gotten it. He was invisible in his statement. It wasn't like, oh, I should get it or I shouldn't, because he can be whatever for his work. So it's not like men are getting attacked. He was just invisible in a situation that had nothing to do with him. The fact that they were snubbed, that they deserved it. He talked about the qualities of what they did. Like, oh, they're women, they're great, they deserve this. But he talked about their grit and he talked about their talent and all of those things. And I think that's what we really need for change. But from men, for if you're wondering kind of how to stand for a woman, take a chance and do something cheesy, or in his case, very attractive and eloquent and noble, of just like, it's not about me.
right. And recognizing that she had such an impact, not even just Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie, but that Barbie has had such a cultural impact that he 100% is Barbie's main. Like, without Barbie, Ken would not exist.
Yeah.
And literally back in the day, they were like, Barbie needs a boyfriend. Let's give her Ken. It's kind of like Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. They're never getting married. They're boyfriend and girlfriend, but you can't have one without the other. Mm-hmm. And he recognizes that. And then really the whole gist of that whole film, did you see it?
Oh yeah.
The whole gist of that film was kind of tongue in cheek that Barbie's like, I exist outside of Mattel world, outside of Barbie world, Barbie land. I exist outside of Barbie land, but I'm still going to have to fight the male-dominated world to have a voice, to have a say. I thought that scene in the film where they're walking on the beach and they're wearing their cute, like, little rollerblading outfits, and the construction men start catcalling her, and she assumes, because she's from Barbie world where everybody's a woman, right? That she's like, that's weird. Why are they whistling at me? And then she gets closer and they're like, oh, she's like, they're men, right? And it was very well done, but but then a lot of men were like, we don't like the way we're portrayed. And it's like what we talked about earlier. If you don't like the way you're being portrayed,
be better.
Then be better. If you don't want to appear in Are We Dating the Same Guy on Bookface, then don't earn that title.
And if you're not the problem, then take the Ryan Gosling approach and stand up for the women in your life and don't talk about you.
And vice versa. If you're the
it's the same thing. I mean, the interesting thing that I thought was really powerful about that film is that they show you how shocking the patriarchy is by reversing it, right? And showing you a world in which it's the opposite. And so you're like, whoa, that is weird. Oh my God, we've been doing this whole time. But the Ken character, it is right that Ryan would be acknowledged for his portrayal of that, and also especially Greta Gerwig's writing of it, because it really showed kind of like what a kind of a lostness and reckoning with a lostness. And again, the people in power kind of had to empower, once taken back, kind of had to empower the people that weren't in power to find their own identity and all those things. So they go into these great things. And I think Ryan Gosling like absolutely brought it back into the perfect reversal, where he was like, it's kind of something that women were expected to say of men in the past, of just like, oh yeah, I couldn't have done it without him, you know, and all of that. And I think it just A++++.
And I think America Ferrera, I think she was nominated for supporting actress. She was incredible in that film, and she should be. One of the takeaways that I thought was important, my mom is 76. Sometimes we talk about dating, sometimes we talk about the world, sometimes, but when I visited them last year, I was like, you may want to go see this movie. And she was like, oh, it's going to be campy. And I went, yes, there are parts of it that are campy. Let me read this soliloquy that was at the end of the movie. Mm. So I read that soliloquy monologue to her, and she said, can you read that again to me? Reading it the second time to her, my dad, who's not interested in the conversation, got up and walked away. And my mom went, isn't that interesting? Mm. And I went, yes. But then after reading it for the second time, my mom has tears running down her face. And I was like, that's the power of film. That's the power of a good film. And I told her, I'm like, this piece, Greta Gerwig and America Ferrera literally went back and forth on for months, making sure that the wording was right, that it was represented, that it was factual and true, and that they weren't being anything, like they weren't twisting a odd reveal or future. And they literally said, America Ferrera said the day that they filmed it, the first time they filmed it on set, there wasn't a dry eye on the set. And that men working on the set were literally coming up to her and Gerwig after the fact saying, we are so sorry for the way that we have treated you. We are so sorry for what we've done to you. And I went, that speaks volumes.
Yes.
Also, let's talk about the Academy and women's involvement. The only female director I think that won recently was the woman that did The Hurt Locker, but her movie was about men in war. So obviously she's going to get recognition for that. And probably people didn't think she would win as best director because she's a woman. What's her name? And I can't think of it. It was on the top of my head a minute ago. But Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins, right? Wonder Woman comes out. That movie killed it at the box office. And the second one killed it at the box office. And she had all of the support, and she made even more money up until Greta Gerwig knocked it out of the park. But was Patty Jenkins and Wonder Woman celebrated? No. It got a nomination for, I think, sound editing. Mm-hmm. So the Academy is not known necessarily for celebrating women. They certainly weren't celebrated for cultural representation until recently. Mm-hmm. But then I'll even compare it to the Miss America pageant. So if you follow the Miss America pageant, and then we'll get to our first comment, but if you follow the Miss America pageant, up until 1984, which is when Vanessa Williams won, it was all white women. And then people started to complain, you don't have any cultural representation. Now, there were African-American women that were in the pageant. They never made the top 10. They weren't celebrated. It was always one or the other. And so the African-American community went off and created their own African-American or Black Miss America pageant. And then people were like, well, we can't have that happen. So 1984 rolls around. Miss New York, who is Vanessa Williams, who everybody knows or doesn't know, but a lot of people know her, right? Iconic, super talent. Actually is opening in The Devil Wears Prada as Miranda Priestley in London in October. So I really want to go see that. Right? We should go back over for that. Anyway, Tony Award nominated multi-platinum recording artist, right? She's Miss New York in 1984. And there was a lot of, oh, we've never had a black winner. We've never had a black winner. Miss New Jersey, 1984, Suzette Charles. There was only one other black woman in the Miss America pageant that year. She didn't make it to the top 10. Suzette Charles and Vanessa Williams make it into the top 10. They are both very whitewashed in their pageant and the way they look. And then Vanessa Williams wins. Suzette Charles is first runner-up. And it's almost like they expected one of them to falter, which we all know Vanessa Williams loses her crown because somebody photos of her that she took from a modeling job years earlier that she didn't think really would see the light of day. And the guy sold them to Penthouse. She loses her crown. We still have a black female winner that they say is still within the second winner, right, in Suzette Charles. And so you were like, what? And then every other year after that, we had a black winner. So it literally was like white winner, black winner, white winner, black winner for like the next 10 years. Then, and all deserving women, but you started to feel like it was just, we're gonna placate people and we're gonna give them what they want. And then you heard, well, you've never had an Asian winner. You've never had a Polynesian winner. And then one year our Miss America was Polynesian, Indonesian, Filipino, Hawaiian, and they were like, oh, we just covered 4 bases with this one. And then it literally became like, we're not picking the girl that's right for the crown. We're giving people what they want so we don't have backlash. And I thought, you're negating the power of what a woman can do and be. And it's still, do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody about this the other day. You know, if you experience people with true equality, you don't have to think so hard about what the optics are. Like if you're worried all the time, like, oh, is it going to sound offensive? And you probably don't have a great meter going on because you're working off of some kind of written rules of whether or not you're going to get fried for this versus true equality.
Well, and that's the thing
but it is interesting in the Barbie thing because, and in Miss America and all of it, because the system itself is a little bit larger even than the people within it. And so it sort of is like, so Poor Things, I was looking up.
Yeah, I really wanted to see that.
Oh my God. It's life-changing for me as a female. Absolutely life-changing. And I truly mean that. So I highly suggest people watch that. But that got good recognition. It is a little bit more Oscar-ish. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I think the Oscars may have tried to do is like, oh, well, we'll just do it on merit truly and our style and blah, blah, blah. And so we'll at least have this thing. And then it's okay that Barbie's in this way, but we'll just go with what felt right for artistically only. But the fact of the matter is the system exists. The default, if you just go with how things are going to go, is going to end up somehow the man got the thing, you know, whether we're thinking. So you have to think about it. And at the same time, it's really challenging. And where it's like, if it's just boil it all back down, it is the Ryan Goslings. It's the people who write it and make it and are brave enough to say what they need to say. And the America Ferraras who bring it to life. And the Ryan Goslings who say this was not good enough.
Right.
That together can really change stuff.
Well, and in the other form too, I held off on watching The Color Purple this last year because I was like, I saw the original and it was great. And who doesn't love Steven Spielberg, and who doesn't love Oprah Winfrey and Whoopi Goldberg? I was like, that was a great film. How is this going to be different? Now I watched it a couple of weekends ago on HBO Max and I loved it because it's a new telling and it's a retelling and it's a little bit fresh. But then I'm not saying people don't deserve to be nominated from that film because they do. But it's like Oscar said, well, let's nominate everybody from that film. right? So we show that we have representation. So we'll just nominate every character in that film, and you go, you can't say it because I can't say it because people are like, she doesn't understand, she has white privilege. And I'm like, okay, but you realize that they're not nominating you necessarily because of your base and your work and your talent, as much as they don't want to hear on the back end that you don't deserve to be nominated. And it's just, it gets more convoluted. Recognize the art, recognize the talent, recognize the box office draw. They all had that in spades.
Yeah, but it's hard because it's like they might have tried to do that, and then Barbie was just the one film that they were like, it's not as Oscar-y. But then it's like, I don't know.
But then the votes can be split sometimes too. That's how Marissa Tomei won for My Cousin Vinny. So
and I feel like it is the people ourselves who can really make the change, because you think about the ripple effect of just this conversation we're having from what he did and what he said and what they made and the time that was put into that monologue and the expertise that was put into that monologue, that like the Academy itself is just absolutely in the background. The system just quieted it down, and the people are together.
For those of you that don't know the monologue, I will read it for you because I feel that's important. While I look it up real fast on my phone, let's go ahead and revert back to who we have watching and her comment. And I guess read her first comment and then click on her second comment.
Yeah. So Teresa Redlin, we are so happy to have you. And thank you for weighing in. We're thrilled that you are commenting. So I met my man at Walmart. Who knew? We'd been dating for 6 months, lots of fun, but simple dates. Yes. We both like to hike, kayak, sightsee. Yeah, I love meeting. I have a thing where I like meeting people in stores and grocery stores and coffee shops and things like that. And sometimes you just have to be open to sort of like literally bumping into somebody or giving someone a compliment or all of those kinds of things. But yes, I'm heavy to the side of the more we can meet people in real life, the better. So that's really nice to know that exists. Okay, we've got another continuation, I think, of that comment. I feel and have been shown that I'm high priority. It did not start that way. We gained that together.
Which we've talked about a lot today. We talked a lot about that today.
Maybe you've sparked that into another topic for us.
So she's saying, I feel that I've been shown that I'm high priority. It did not start out that way. I'd actually be interested to know how it started out if you're still in here.
Yeah.
And then we're going to actually read this monologue. So the monologue Ferreira told Vanity Fair was one of the first things Greta mentioned to me even before I read the script. She said, I wrote this monologue for Gloria, your character, and I've always imagined you saying this. Mm-hmm. While that was flattering, it also felt like pressure in the nicest way. I read the monologue and it hit me as powerful and meaningful. It also felt like, wow, what a gift as an actor to get to deliver something that feels so cathartic and truthful. But it also felt like this pivotal moment that I obviously didn't want to mess up. There was a little bit of healthy pressure around it. It took them 2 days to shoot the scene. And Ferreira says she probably did 30 to 50 full runs of it, top to bottom. Her favorite line, she says, is the always be grateful line, which we talked about in our manifestation episode.
Yeah, you've got to look out for that guy.
And which she worked on together with Gerwig. During her performance, Gerwig tells The Atlantic, when America was giving her beautiful speech, I was just sobbing. And then I looked around and realized everybody crying on the set. The men are crying too. Because they have their own speech they feel that they can never, ever give. You know? And they have their twin tightrope, which is also painful. So the monologue is, it is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart. And it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, we have to always be extraordinary, but somehow we're always doing it wrong. You have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money because that's crass. You have to be a boss, but you can't be mean. You have to lead, but you can't squash other people's ideas. You're supposed to love being a mother, but don't talk about your kids all the damn time. You have to be a career woman, but also always be looking out for other people. You have to answer for men's bad behavior, which is insane. But if you point that out, you're accused of complaining. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. But always stand out and always be grateful, but never forget that the system is rigged. So find a way to acknowledge that both, also be grateful. You have to never get old, never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory, and nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, that not only are you doing everything wrong, but also everything is your fault. I'm so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll just representing women, then I don't even know. And that hits home with what I just experienced with the one guy. Mm-hmm. It also hits home. Somebody asked me once, they said, you've lived in both vessels as an intersex woman. And I said, 100%. And they said, what are the differences? And I literally looked at them and said, when I was in the male vessel, I could walk into any building and walk out with a job. Didn't matter if I was qualified for that job. Didn't matter if I had skill sets that you need to do that job. Just because of the vessel I was in, I could walk in, phone in the whole fucking interview, and walk out with a salary and a job. And as a woman in this vessel, I've learned that I have to wear sexy tops and pull my skirt up a little bit higher and be sexy, but not too sexy, right? Because you don't want to be classified as a slut, right? Okay. But you've got to be sexy enough that you can control a boardroom and that you can put men in their place, but not put them too far in their place, because then you're considered a bitch, right? And if the hierarchy like Fox News says you need to show your legs on camera and you need to give off sex appeal, you've got to give off sex appeal. And you might have to do it drunk. You might have to also do it in heels. You might have to walk down the stairs backwards like Ginger Roger. You have to do all of that shit and you still won't get the job. I said, that's the difference. I have to run circles around the men that are also interviewing for the same job. I have to do it in heels. I have to be smart. I have to be on top of my game. I have to prove that I'm on top of my game. I have to show you all of my diplomas and all of where I went to school and my GPA. And I have to do all of that around a man that literally can walk in, phone the interview in, leave and be like, I got the job. And then 6 months later be on the street because he couldn't do the job.
And you have to do all of that without running circles around the man who's hiring you, who wants to always feel in charge at the end of the day. And also will then put you in your place when you're walking through the office by saying something, by making you feel less than, by, verbally abusing you, and you have to do all of that. And you think, and then let's parlay it into dating, right? You parlay it into dating, and I have to be the perfect girl for you. I have to be the perfect girl for you. And I have to drop everything I'm doing to pleasure you. And I have to be open to all of your whims. And if you tell me that you have a fantasy or fetish, I have to say, okay, let's go explore that. So I'm labeled as not being difficult just to get love.
or just to have a partnership or just to be around, right?
I was talking to somebody the other day, a man, and I was talking about how in relationships I spent so much time constantly trying to find out where the other person's roof was, where their ceiling was of their power or their ability on every single level of their life at all times. There's a measuring. And I had to make sure that I always came in just here, that I never go over. Because if I go over, they will leave or they will abuse me until I fall underneath. And I know that's a story that I have to let go of because, again, the part of manifesting that is real that we talked about in that episode that's coming up, obviously you can self-fulfill that prophecy. But I have come to a place where I'd rather be alone. And then I have found men, the Ryan Gosling types of this world, and the people who take a stand, and the man who was listening to me, who later wished me Happy International Women's Day, who don't want me to live under their ceiling. But we also talked about how they're taught that they have to be more. So you both are given this objective, and somebody's got to stop.
Well, and some of them are taught. I've met a lot of men recently in the last couple of years that say, I have to make more money than you. I was taught that I have to take care of you. But then they fight taking care of you. You're like, okay. And then you're like, I need money to go get my nails done. You wanted to take care of everything. I'm telling you, I don't need your money,
right?
But you want to feel wanted. So then I say, okay, well, I need to go get my nails done. And then you bristle over the charge of what it takes to get your nails done. You're like,
well, and that's tough because that's proof that it's not a natural human state that you want to have a leash or carry someone on your back. And it's not a natural state that it feels good to be a leech.
Right.
But I've pretended to know how to do that. And I've just failed at it so much that I decided I'd rather be alone. And I have people in my life now. But
you'll hear guys recently say to girls when you read these things on Facebook, and they're like, you don't need me. And I need to feel like you need me. And you're like, wait a second.
No.
Don't frame it like that.
No. And the thing is
I'm an independent woman.
You know what? We do need you. Reference Ryan Gosling.
100%. That.
If you we need, then figure out what we actually fucking need.
That. But that's true, right? And then relationships are literally working together to not be alone. That's what you're doing. You're working together to not be single, right? So that means you've got to work a little bit and your partner's got to work a little bit. And this isn't a male, female, female, male. This could be female, female. It could be male, male. It could be poly. But you've got to work together. You got to sit down at the table and work together to keep that relationships are work. My dad, I said it recently, somebody was like, well, that's kind of toxic. And I went, is it? My parents have been together for 53 years. That's unheard of these days. I mean, and they were a different subset. But my dad used to say to us all the time, you never go into marriage thinking you could ever possibly divorce. Now, he's not saying if you're in a toxic situation, you don't leave that. He's saying you are committing to this person to get married to them. So you're going to work through your issues. Mm-hmm. And if there ever is a time when it becomes, I don't know what the right word is, but if ever there's a time when it becomes so bad, you owe it to each other because you married them 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago to figure out what's going to work and to not leave them behind, right? Michelle Obama talks about no kid being left behind. He's basically saying no partner should be left behind, right? And so he said to me recently, goes, so many people today literally go, oh, this is hard. I quit. I'll just go find another one.
Add patriarchy to that. And women are getting cycled out like Uber Eats that came in cold when they arrived at the door and got sent back.
That's accurate. That's accurate. I'm still waiting, if she's still in here, to see how it started for you, because you said that you were not a
Yeah.
priority at first. And so we were just interested in how that started for you.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can share with us what you did to make sure you fell on that radar, right? And that you became high priority.
Yeah.
Because women
how-
struggle with that too, and
Well,
men do too.
and I think we are taught that we have to come in at high priority. Like, you have to be blowing us up all the time, and we have to be, you know, being sent to Paris on your private jet that you somehow spent your whole life's energy to try to have so that you could give it to us. And we feel insulted and undermined in our worth when we don't get it, because we're taught that our worth is tied to it, and you're taught your worth is tied to blah, 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 blah. But the high priority thing, I think, Teresa, I mean, your relationship sounds ideal in the sense that, like, priority status is earned between two people over time. And it still shouldn't be out of proportion for what's right for your lives. And so, but I think there are these pressures that, like, that it's just this built-in automatic reaction of, oh my God, he's not putting me high priority. If he wanted to, he would, he blah, 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 blah. And you freak out. And yeah, it sounds like you have a really healthy relationship. So if you want to write into us too, we can follow up on
you can just write us at info@justjuleigh.com, or we're interested. And then I think the other thing, and we're going to be coming up on the end of our hour, and we've had a great show, and it's already told you that. But we talked about earlier in another show that you should listen to. We call it manifestation, right? Manifestating and dating kind of blended together. But also, and we talked about in that show how it's kind of a misnomer. So many people will say you're not doing it right. That's why it's not. Another tagline that I don't love is people are like, you should know your worth. You should know your worth, and not. And you're like, wait a second. I think everybody knows their worth, and everybody knows where they want to fall. But when it doesn't work, telling them that they're not doing it right and they don't know their worth, that's kind of, maybe that's a topic for another show.
Well, I write extensively about valuing human lives in the first place, putting measurements on us that we can even compare our worths. But that's a whole other topic for another time.
It's another topic.
It's all toxic.
So anyway, guys, you
watch the Oscars. Let's see what happens.
Yes. And I would actually be really happy if he won, right? Yeah. And then he stands up there and says, I'm sharing this because that was wrong, world, right? Mm-hmm. And then people will love him even more. Mm-hmm. Also, join us every Sunday night at 7 p.m. We are not always together. Oftentimes, Rebecca is joining from Savannah. And then I'm here, and it's a great show, and we've been having a lot of fun doing it. But you can follow us on YouTube at justjuleigh.com. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button, and then you also hit the notification button so you're alerted whenever we have a new episode out. Also, if you want to follow us on justjuleigh.com and sign up with your email, you'll get notifications that we're live on Sunday night at 7 because it auto-generates that message out. We try to pick topics and advocate or share those topics well in advance. I've been out of commission for about a month and a half, so tonight was just kind of a recap and a blend of a couple of things. But we will have a show on manifestation coming up. We didn't really title the other show that we did today, and then
it's sort of how much sex is too much sex.
That's right. How much going into the conversation or into the dating is too much sex for you, or too much sex, energy, and talk. So both great shows that you will see in the future. And then we try and just kind of navigate each week. Usually after these shows, she'll be like, hey, let's do this next week, or let's do that next week. And getting back to our original format, as I'm trying to find a partner, usually we will pick people off of the Hive or off of other dating sites to try and negotiate and interject in facilitating a healthy relationship and a meet. As Manny says, I'm taking it for the team all the time to teach you ways, and I'm hoping sooner than later I won't be the subject of the podcast, but that we can help somebody out there, male or female, gay or straight, that would like help in navigating who they should be going out with. As my friend Lindsay Bradford says, for the longest time, my picker was broken. I think my picker is getting a little stronger.
Your picker's pretty good.
So,
pretty good. It's getting as strong as your heart.
I was like, oh, my heart's kind of black and cold. I'm just kidding.
No, apparently it got a tune-up and it's been doing pretty well anyway.
I love this top.
I
and it
have
makes
a new.
my
I know.
breast look so big. Look,
They look lovely.
they look huge.
Did we start this one out with me accidentally touching your ass?
Yes.
This is a little mouse pad I've been playing with for all the episodes we've been doing. It says dignity. I've decided that's going to be the topic for our next week's show. What does it mean to have dignity? What's taught to you that you should be to be dignified versus what it really means to have dignity for yourself? So
People tell me I lead with dignity and grace, and I'm like, I should probably look up both of those words.
well, I would say that you're the perfect example of dignity that is true dignity versus like, oh, you're supposed to be such a lady and never swear, you know?
I swear all the time.
Yeah. So how to be
I swear all the time.
How to have dignity while being undignified.
And if you want to hear me swear, find us wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll try not to get fined.
Just Julie anywhere. Me, I'm the one that brings the swears. She tries to keep it more family friendly, and I always bring us down.
That's not true. I cuss like a sailor, especially if you get like dry Michelle in me. Dry Michelle and her dry chateau.
Dry
She's
Michelle,
crispy.
we won't keep you crispy forever. We got you.
So that is our episode tonight. I talked about Miss America earlier. It's one of my favorite portraits that I have. That is my mom when she was 18, and she was Miss Columbus, Georgia. Mhm. Miss Columbus, Georgia. And look how gorgeous she looks. People say, you're beautiful. And I'm like, I look like.
Yeah, you do.
Beautiful. So she was in the Miss Georgia top 10. I just thought it was funny that she's looking over my shoulder as we talk about the Miss America pageant. She's so cute. She's so cute.
Yeah.
We love her. And because it is the 10th, her birthday's in 3 days. So happy birthday, Mom. Happy birthday, Bootsy.
Thank you for giving us Julie.
So we love you. And she would not like that I cuss. So we're not going to cuss. But we are going to end the show tonight. And please join us next week for Dignity, which is our episode on Rose all day. Julie's a mess. Optimistic in Orlando. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.
For more content, follow justjuleigh.com. That's just Julie, JULEIGH.com. Thank you to our guests, and thank you for joining us this evening. Join us next week as Julie tries a different rosé.